Good day to everyone joining us, and welcome to today's X-Talks webinar. Today's talk is entitled, What Can an Advanced Digital Platform Bring to Decentralized Clinical Trials? My name is Ryan Muse, and I'll be your X-Talks host for today. Today's webinar will run for approximately 60 minutes, and this presentation includes a Q&A session with our speaker. Now, the webinar is designed to be interactive, and webinars work best when you're involved. So please feel free to submit your questions and comments for our speaker throughout the presentation using the questions chat box, and we'll try to attend to your questions during the Q&A session. This chat box is located in the control panel, which is on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you require any assistance along the way, please contact me at any time by sending a message using the same chat panel. At this time, know that all participants are in listen-only mode, and please note that the event will be recorded and made available for streaming on xtalks.com. At this point, I'd like to thank MRN, who developed the content for this presentation. MRN's focus is supporting clinical research delivery by helping patients participate in trials while remaining in their communities wherever they live around the world. MRN aims to reduce the inconvenience and disruption of visits to investigator sites as much as feasible by reducing the number of those visits. When visits need to be undertaken, MRN work to make the process as efficient and convenient as possible. They enhance patient enrollment, recruitment, and retention. And now I'd like to introduce our speaker for today's event. Edward Tribell is the Executive Director, Product Development of Digital Health at MRN and is responsible for the launch of new products and services in the pivoting digital health and data-centric operating environment of clinical trials. His career has focused on the forefront of disruptive innovations in the telecommunications, semiconductor, SaaS, PaaS software platforms, mobile cellular data networks, and the healthcare industry for more than 30 years. His career started in designing and engineering, and then migrated into significant roles in project engineering, program management, global sales, product marketing, and strategic business development for enterprises focused on digital technology innovation. And so now, without further ado, I'd like to hand the presentation over to our speaker today. Edward Tribell, you may begin when you're ready.
Hi, Ryan. Thank you very much for that very kind introduction. And I'm really looking forward to having an opportunity of presenting the information that we'll go through shortly. And certainly, I'm looking forward to any questions that anybody may have during this process. So the title of the talk is, What Can an Advanced Digital Platform Bring to Decentralized Clinical Trials? And realistically, that's a complex question in and of itself. And there's two fundamental elements that I would like to address to start. So first, what are decentralized clinical trials? And then secondly, what exactly is an advanced digital platform? And once we understand the foundation of responses to those two questions, we can take a deeper dive into the benefits and advantages that an advanced digital platform will bring to decentralized clinical trials. So the real difference between a traditional centralized or site-based clinical trial is that it really forces the patient to come to the site. And we certainly have heard through numerous industry conferences and seminars that have existed over the last 3 to 4 years about the dramatic shift in the industry to become patient-focused, patient-centric, to address the challenges with the time and the burden that's placed on the patient to travel to the site, the distance from the patient's home to the actual site, the cost associated with that. Some of the patients may no longer be driving. So there's a tremendous challenge in terms of a centralized or site-based clinical trial. And then the hope of the industry was that by moving to a decentralized clinical trial, that there's a way to bring the study to the patient to support their participation, their active engagement, and really to bring the resources to the patient. And one of the great values of MRN is that our whole company and our services are all focused on bringing that human touch that focus on patient centricity to decentralized clinical trials, to our home trial support services that would normally be provided during a site visit. So the real answer to the question is actually fairly complicated. But what is interesting is that the two are strongly interrelated. So if you take a look at the real goal and the needs of a decentralized clinical trial, it really tries to ease the burden and maximize a patient's participation by reducing or eliminating the need for them to travel to a specific study site, and really looking how can we provide home-based support and so that they maximize their participation and engagement, and also that they stay engaged in the study and don't drop off. Retention rates are often a problem, especially in site-based studies, and really the decentralized clinical trial attempts to address that. And then if you take a look at the concept of an advanced digital platform, what does that provide? So it integrates and it unifies software tools and technologies with smart devices into an integrated product and service offering that also meets the operational, the regulatory, and data privacy mandates that are required in a clinical trial. So the advanced digital platform really provides now an operational, regulatory compliant, data privacy compliant solution that allows the patients to communicate with study staff from their home to collect the data that is required in the protocol. So it really advances a whole new level of engagement and empowerment to the decentralized clinical trial study option. But there's been a real challenge for adoption in terms of the use of an advanced digital platform in the clinical trial space. And this picture kind of represents a story that I often tell. My background has been in disruptive innovations in the use of technology in multiple fields. And I often feel like, from my background and perspective, that I'm like an evangelizer standing on one mountain, yelling across the valley to the clinical trial industry comprised of brilliant scientists and saying, you know, you can do this using technology. And kind of the other side across the valley is saying, yeah, but we have challenges with data privacy and regulations, and we don't know if this has ever been done before. So there's a real challenge for adoption in terms of maximizing the benefit of technology that exists that can be implemented in advanced digital platforms. So, and there's a profound awareness gap in the industry, at least in the conversations that I've had, on how an advanced digital platform and everything that it can possibly do can be successfully used in decentralized clinical trials. And I'll just cite two simple examples. So about a year and a half ago, I was at a conference, and the head of clinical operations came to me and said, Ed, we're really interested in looking at using mobile devices for our study. This would be the first time that we've done that. And we'd like to be able to hand patients maybe a tablet or a phone, but it cannot be a mobile app. And of course, if you understand technology and how mobile devices work, you know, you basically provide them with an app to perform certain functions. So it was kind of an awakening moment for me, and I kind of thought, well, that's interesting. So do you have an iPhone? Yes. Are your emails on your iPhone? Yes. Do you sometimes use FaceTime to communicate with friends and family or even coworkers? Yes. And so what I said is, you know, so those are all mobile apps. And the clinical trial industry for more than 10 years have been actively using mobile devices with embedded applications for clinical trials. So she was shocked to hear that that was the reality. And then recently I was on a call where we talked about how can we use an advanced digital platform in a study. And one of the things I talked about was the advantage of having now a tool to do electronic consent. And I was asked the question, but I understand e-consent is only available in the US. So there's this huge awareness gap about the empowerment of what an advanced digital platform could provide, and really understanding the operational challenges and limitations and benefits in this highly regulated environment. So in April of 2019, Scott Gottlieb, who at the time was the FDA commissioner, actually put out a statement about their focus and strategy on modernizing clinical trials. And what he basically said was that there was a tremendous opportunity within the industry to really evaluate the role of decentralized clinical trials and the use of mobile technologies, and really identifying innovation in trial designs. And along with that, helping to validate novel endpoints using this digital technology that really changes the way we accomplish decentralized clinical trials and really take advantage of the empowerment of digital technology. But one of the things that he did point out is, and I'll just quote this, unfortunately, we've seen a continued reluctance to adopt innovative approaches among sponsors and clinical research organizations. So he kind of laid a strong foundation about what he saw as the vision of the future of clinical trials. What came out of that? So realistically, so decentralized clinical trials can solve many of the challenges that are inherent in traditional site-specific studies. However, global clinical trial regulations have not really kept pace with the empowerment that digital tools and technologies could bring to decentralized trials. So some of these challenges are generalized awareness of what is possible and proven. And I'm not really sure the best method to address that challenge, because it really starts um, in the design of the protocol. And I know that there's an educational process that needs to be developed. I don't know if it's from the technology companies. Certainly organizations like CTDI have done tremendous value in terms of evangelizing the benefits of using advanced digital platforms in decentralized trials. But in some cases, that information is not flowing down and really initiating benefits during the protocol design. There's a huge challenge in data privacy considerations and regulations. Many of us are aware that the Privacy Shield considerations of the United States in terms of the sharing of personal data has been a huge challenge to the industry. There have been some innovative ways to work by establishing data collection within the EU. But certainly as we move forward as an industry, and the US market is maybe critical in terms of patient population and engagement, that is something that needs to be addressed. Patient confidentiality considerations, even within a service like telemedicine. One of the things that has recently developed is the ability to do a telemedicine, record that, but actually to blur out a patient's face so that if the information is accessed, there's no identification of a specific person. Confirmation of patient identities is also a challenge. How do you know the persons who are recording the data in the mobile device is the actual patient and not someone else? The delivery of investigational medication to patients. How do you send that? How do you track it? How do you verify that it's been received by the patient? And also, how do you verify that the patient has actually taken the medication? And there's a lot of changing needs in terms of considerations of data privacy that really is a barrier in terms of global and universal adoption that we'll work through. So The technology exists to accomplish amazing things, but the special regulatory and data privacy mandates adds a layer of challenges for universal acceptance and use. And that's really something that we need to work on together to get past. So when looking at these advanced digital platforms, there's a whole new world of acronyms that have been created. There seems to be some that get generated almost every week. And at some level, keeping up with these terms can be a challenge in and of themselves. And each one leads to a whole series of questions in terms of what does that mean? Uh, what are the issues concerning with storage of data? And everything that I just went through in terms of the challenges about patient identification, uh, privacy concerns. So as we look at bringing advanced digital platforms into the decentralized space, again, understanding these acronyms, what they provide in terms of services, is really a challenge that the industry needs to address. And again, it really starts at the design of the protocol level and how these functions or capabilities really add to the benefit of using an advanced digital platform in these trials. So it is unfortunate, but it turned out to be a benefit. So the presence of COVID dramatically changed the way that we launched clinical trials because patients could no longer travel to sites based on travel restrictions, the lack of vaccines at a certain point. So a lot of the challenges that Scott Gottlieb identified in his statement in April of 2019 really has taken a monumental step forward in terms of adoption of digital platforms in the forced adoption of decentralized clinical trials. So the concept of looking at a decentralized clinical trial actually existed before the pandemic. 3 years ago, again, there was a lot of discussions on patient centricity and how we can address both the inclusion of patients at a different level, having them more engaged, keeping track of patients, reducing the burden on patient participation, which impacted retention rates. So, but it was more of a let's investigate the possibility of using technology in a decentralized trial environment. But the whole industry as a whole never really took that giant leap forward. And certainly there's been a number of conferences and seminars that have really addressed that during COVID and post-COVID about the forced adoption and the benefits that that has brought. So many of the methods previously used in clinical trials during the launch of COVID were no longer practical. And really what happened was COVID forced a whole new paradigm shift in how we launch clinical trials and how we run clinical trials. So what came out of this is we realized patients could be recruited remotely. And certainly there's been companies like StudyKick, who was recently acquired, that use social media platforms to actively recruit patients. So all of a sudden, there was a whole new shift on the way patients could be recruited remotely. Physicians could actually accomplish visits via telemedicine. So in the clinical trial space, that was a major leap forward. But we actually saw even before COVID that a lot of hospital systems were using telemedicine for remote patient assessments. You could sign up online with your hospital network, request an appointment. You would be asked, do you want this to be an in-site visit or is telemedicine acceptable? The whole insurance industry also adopted new rates to promote the use of telemedicine and technology. So there was a dramatic shift in the use of technology and telemedicine, starting with hospitals that sorry, it was a temporary mute, that flowed down into clinical trials. And then also, central to MRN's business, nurses or healthcare professional visits could be used now effectively to continue to bring services that would normally be accomplished at sites. So IMPs now could be accomplished by the nurse doing a remote visit, blood draws, biosample connection, wellness checks. So a subset of all services that would normally be done at site could now be done by nurses and healthcare professionals in the patient's home. And then mobile technology could then be used for remote data collection. So this talks to patient-reported outcomes, the completion of forms where diary, wellness checks, validated instruments that were normally done on paper can now be done on an iPhone, or an Android phone, or a tablet, or even through a computer, through a patient registering and using their account or mobile device to do remote data collection. And as we discussed earlier, now patients can also do consenting using e-consent, and could be accomplished using telemedicine, or I've actually been involved where an e-consent form would be accomplished on a mobile device. And if a patient had a question, they could click on a button. It would set up a telemedicine call, and the questions could be answered there. And that facilitated the accomplishment of the consenting process using an advanced platform. And there's been a huge shift and a historical shift in how source data is now collected in decentralized clinical trials. And this is something that also should be considered in the design element. So, traditionally in the past, patients would go to a site, the physician would see the patient, and then the data would be generated, the source data would be generated at the site, initially on paper, and then moving forward into either an EHR or an EMR system. So, that's the use of advanced digital platform for the recording of patient data at the site. And then central to what MRN does is the healthcare provider now is able to go to a patient's home. And I'll share with you shortly that MRN is making a dramatic shift in the adoption of an advanced digital platform in moving from paper-based forms to electronic-based forms. So using eSource technology and something called DDC, direct data capture, to be able to input data directly into an electronic form and have that data stored on a platform. There certainly are a number of companies that have shifted into providing ePro-based solutions or electronic patient-reported outcomes. This is the provisioning of a mobile device to a patient. It has what the patient is supposed to do in the study in the phone. So there's appointment reminders, there's questionnaires, there's validated instruments that are accomplished within the ePro platform. So all of a sudden, the collection of this source data is now using an advanced digital platform. And then moving forward, there's great interest and great discussions about how to use real-world data and real-world evidence in the accomplishment of clinical trials. And really what we're talking about here is the use of smart devices and wearable devices to continuously flow data anywhere and at any time into an advanced digital platform, and to be able to have that data available as part of the study. So there's been a huge shift over the last, I would say, actually about 10 years, especially with ePro development in the shifting of source data from more paper-based to the use of advanced digital platforms. So this has been a huge shift in terms of what's happening in the industry. The other great thing that's happened within our industry is that there's now some exciting organizations that are focused on really advancing decentralized clinical trials. Many of us are aware of an organization that was founded by Craig Lipset and a group of evangelizers early in the adoption of digital technology and it's called the Decentralized Trials Research Alliance. MRN is a founding member of that organization, and it's really focused on a collaborative um, venue of stakeholders to really focus on the adoption of patient-focused decentralized clinical trials, and also the research associated with it, to really start at the foundation of the design of the protocol and the clinical study, to really take a look at how can we use advanced digital platforms for this study. Human First is a very interesting company that actually was founded by one of the most amazing young people, I think, in our industry, Andy Korovas, who actually had a company called Electra Labs. And I'll never forget a paper she published that really took a look at all the software platforms that existed within the clinical trial industry. And she said at a conference, you know, I just was trying to figure out what every software platform did. And she did this great paper that really said, here's maybe 200 software platforms, and here's what each of them say that they do. And she pivoted that knowledge into Human First, that's really taking a look at pioneering how to accomplish decentralized clinical trials and virtual care, and has a database of information of digital devices, what studies they were used on, what phase was it used on, who were the sponsors and CROs involved. So it's a great repository of information in terms of taking a look at what can be done in a clinical trial, again, starting at the point of the protocol design. DIME is a digital medicine society, and it's really looking at digital medicine and how can you use technology in the development of these protocols. And then IMI, the Innovative Medicines Initiative, is really looking to improve health by speeding up the development of patient access, innovative medicines, and particularly in an area where there's an unmet medical or social need. So there's a lot of great work that's being done by these organizations to take a look at being a valuable resource in the adoption of advanced digital platforms in decentralized clinical trials. And I would suggest, if you're not actively engaged with these organizations, please get engaged, because it really establishes a strong foundation of education. And again, looking at how do we start with a protocol design and take advantage of technology and advanced digital platforms in launching this study. So what I wanted to talk about is a specific example that the MRN is accomplishing in our own adoption of an advanced digital platform for our home trial support services. So MRN as a company, you know, is founded on some fundamental principles. One is that, you know, we're vendor agnostic. We're not a technology company, but we're really a user of technology, but also with a sincere appreciation for existing client vendor relationships on technology platforms. So we are aware that our clients may have already selected or may have a long-term vendor relationship with their EDC vendor provider. They may already have a preferred vendor in terms of the use of a technology platform for ePro services, or they may have a preferred vendor for their use of a telemedicine service. So we are agnostic in terms of the adoption of those technologies, and we will always remain that way. For non-legacy vendor relationships, we have our own partnerships, and we can provide an end-to-end solution that addresses, you know, using our eSource platform and integrating with a vendor's EDC, or we can provide the source data for that. We can integrate. We have partnerships in terms of ePro technology solutions. So really, we can either use your existing vendor relationship, or we can use one of ours. We will support all modes of patient engagement, whether it's site-based, whether it's virtual-based, or whether it's a hybrid deployment model that really takes full advantage of complete ecosystem. And our real digital health strategy is focused on enhancing the capability and services for decentralized trials. We're really focused on bringing the study and support services to the patient. I like to say that we bring the human touch to decentralized clinical trials, sensitive to the whole focus on patient centricity. And that can be done either through home visits. We can do that through virtual visits using telemedicine services. And also, we're looking at adopting a full remote patient monitoring system in the future. So, we've tried to lay out the connection points on how data flows throughout this ecosystem. And I won't go through this, but it really is a snapshot of the complexity of how data flows between the various stakeholders in a decentralized trials. And it's at the heart of what we're doing in terms of our architecture. So one of the things that we're involved with now is actually using an advanced digital platform in our home-based trial services. So in the past, like many of us in this home nursing services, so a lot of the home visits are actually accomplished on paper. And we were an early adopter of actually using technology in something called the smart system that allowed us to actually take images of any of the paper forms to accomplish a quality check in advance of providing any of that data to the site. And one of the things that we are doing moving forward as the first step in completely revolutionizing our application use of advanced digital platforms is where you've taken the paper forms, they are now in a digital format in what I will call an intelligent form, where those forms are now going to be installed as a mobile app into an iPad. So our healthcare professionals will show up on site with an iPad with the forms that have been assigned to them for a specific study and for that specific patient. The forms are intelligent in terms of being able to tightly control the data that is input. There's intelligent fields, so it prevents the entry of incorrect data. And so it really is a step forward in terms of how we launch and how we provide home-based services into the industry. So we're launching an eSource platform that will be the repository of that source data. That will give the sites access to that data to also review and to be able for them to be able to accomplish the transcription process into their EDC platform through the ECRF. So it's a significant step forward in terms of the adoption of technology. So what are some of the key benefits of what we're doing in moving to an eSource and direct data capture solution? So one of the fundamental criteria that the MRN looked at and we recognize is that there's not data services, whether it's a cellular data through a mobile network or even Wi-Fi in every home that we visit. So the solution that we're implementing includes both online and offline capability so that our nurses or healthcare professionals can actually show up on site, at a patient's home. And even if there's no Wi-Fi, there's no cellular data coverage, we will be able to enter that data directly into the iPad, record that data, the metadata associated with that entry, for example, a timestamp will still be valid. So that source data will be collected, and then when there's reacquisition of cellular data or Wi-Fi, that data can then be sent into the eSource platform to be included as part of the study. So I talked a little bit about the adoption of the intelligent forms, where the data entry fields are controlled in terms of ranges. So this will provide a benefit and significant reduction in data errors and the corresponding queries or DCF tasks, which are normal as part of a data collection process. The other great benefit is this provides immediate access to the source data by our quality check process, and then also by the client. And the other great benefit, many of us are aware that there's a lot of times in a study, there's a mid-study change, and that may impact the actual forms that would need to be accomplished. So that would be done through MRN directly into the iPad. It would be almost an instantaneous change that would be implemented in terms of what forms the nurse sees. So there's no longer a challenge with having to send new paper forms or to send that remotely to email, have it printed. So it really facilitates a lot of efficiency in this process. And then what are the benefits of provisioned iPads for every MRN nurse or healthcare professional? So of course, it reduces the burden of paper forms. And the devices are provisioned and they're managed through the MRN and our mobile device management platform. So, you know, the access and use is going to be tightly controlled. If the device is lost, we have the ability to shut it off. There would be no access to any data that would be of concern. We can make changes in terms of mid-study changes of forms that are sent. So there's a tremendous advantage in terms of now the empowerment of having this iPad as a provision device with our healthcare professional. And then processes and usage is going to be compliant to data management needs and also data privacy protocols. So that's a huge benefit in terms of a control element. The iPads will have cellular data connectivity in each market, and then also Wi-Fi data connectivity. So there's flexibility in the sharing of data. The platform also then is a step for us to provide additional services moving forward, taking full advantage of this platform that we're launching. So telemedicine will be now enabled in the use of the iPads. Image capture would be enabled, and a whole new range of digital enhanced services. For example, an auscultation service could be easily implemented, taking full advantage of a world of connected devices for patient health monitoring. So we were recently asked to think about how could we accomplish auscultation as a remote service. So we actually have worked with the company on a digital stethoscope device that could be interconnected to the iPads and actually provide auscultation real time, or to be able to record that data and send that to the PI to our platform. So the foundation then of what I basically have described to date is really the empowerment of an advanced digital platform is really overwhelming in terms of what it could bring to the decentralized clinical trials and the real use of the advanced digital platform. It reminds me of there used to be a TV show called $6 Million Man, and there was a saying where they say at the beginning, "We can rebuild him. We have the technology. We can make him better, stronger, faster." And the foundation of what I've just presented in terms of the use of an advanced digital platform for decentralized clinical trials follows that exact same concept. Using the advanced digital platforms, we can make DCTs better, we can make them faster, we can make them more efficient, and we can provide tremendous benefits moving forward. And in terms of MRN's adoption, so a quick snapshot of the company and the foundation of what we bring to DCTs. So we've done over 60,000 home visits in a decentralized clinical trial support service. We do on average more than 1,600 visits per month. We've supported more than 200 clinical trials. One of the great benefits of this is that when MRN is involved in these studies, the patient retention rate is greater than 95%. So again, the fact that we're bringing the human touch into the decentralized clinical trial environment is really benefited by what the MRN provides. The recruitment increase is up to 60% or higher, and we've been involved in 40 plus pediatric studies, more than 100 rare disease studies, and more than 85 IMP administration services. So all these are accomplished in the decentralized clinical trial environment. So I hope that that's given you an insight into both the benefit of an advanced digital platforms within the decentralized clinical trial space. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to address them. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for that insightful presentation. I would like to invite our audience to continue sending their questions or comments right now using the questions window for the Q&A portion of this webinar. Now, I've already received some questions, so we'll get ourselves started with those. The very first question that we have for you asks, what type of trials do you see as being most benefited by the introduction of a digital platform?
So that's a great question. So realistically, I believe, and of course, since I'm an evangelizer of disruptive innovation, I believe that every clinical trial would benefit from the inclusion of an advanced digital platform within that trial space. Now, there certainly are some trials where a particular disease may mandate that the patient would need to go to the site. And I'm thinking specifically of some oncology-based studies and a much older patient population, and where you may be dealing with end-of-life issues. But fundamentally, if you change the paradigm of looking at using an advanced technology, not kind of midway through um, a deployment scenario, but starting with the protocol design from day one, I think that there's tremendous advantages in almost every clinical trial in taking a look at how can we use technology to make the implementation of this clinical trial faster, improve patient retention, improve patient engagement, um, bring a lot of services to the home versus them having to travel. And those really are the foundations of, I think, success. And the numbers that I just presented in terms of MRN's accomplishments, I think speaks to that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. The next question we have for you asks, do you offer your services globally, and how do you handle data privacy topics in EU, China, and Russia?
Great question. So, um, so we are global in terms of the services that we provide. Um, actually, you can go to our website. We actually show the countries where we have done trials to date. Um, we are also opening up new service locations in terms of having a legal entity within those countries to operate clinical trials. So that kind of speaks to the first question about global. So yes, we are global, and we've done studies throughout the world. And you can actually take a look at what specific countries we've done studies to date, and that is changing constantly. And that includes the support in different languages as well. So the data privacy is central to what we do, and we're certainly aware because of the global deployments that we've done that each market is uniquely different. Um, we work carefully with the clinical operations team with each of our clients in making sure that we address any data privacy issues that we have. We have a data privacy function within our organization that also ensures that we're compliant in terms of those considerations.
Wonderful, thank you. How about when dealing with issues with subjects not wanting people to come into their homes?
So that is a challenge. So there are different ways of collecting data. So certainly telemedicine would be one method that we could accomplish to do that. So we could provide them an instrument, whether it's an iPad or a phone, or maybe even an app that they could download on their own device, or on a computer with a webcam, where they could actually support a conversation with one of our staff and go through the requirements of the data collection. There will be some limitations. Some things could not be done remotely. Some things could be done. So for an example, I had previously cited, how are you aware that the patient actually took their medication? So that could be done through telemedicine. Please take your medication. Show me on the video through telemedicine that you've taken it. Um, so there are ways to address that concern. Um, I mean, that's always a challenging situation, and we just need to be aware of that.
Excellent, thank you. For our next question, they would like to know, are there any therapeutic areas or patient populations who wouldn't benefit from an advanced digital offering?
Um, so an advanced digital offering at some level requires some infrastructure that supports the use of that platform. So, I mean, just as a far off consideration, I don't see this happening in North Korea. I don't see this happening in some um, third world countries where there is no data networking infrastructure within that facility. So there may be some limitations in terms of that. But outside of that, since the platform, for example, the platform that we're launching has an offline mode capability, you know, there was nothing that would prevent our nurses from physically accomplishing a home visit, collecting the data in the iPad, and then sending that data to the eSource platform as part of the study data collection when they reacquire access, maybe if they're back home or if they're in a hotel, depending if it's a traveling nurse or whatever. So I don't see any real restrictions or concerns outside of understanding. There may be some countries where, like I cited, North Korea, where the percentage of the population who actually has access to any data networking is almost 0%.
Excellent, thank you. Another question we have then would like to know, will your eSource offering be supported in all countries?
Um, so this speaks to, I think, two elements. So one is certainly um, anywhere where we provide a service, unless there's a major infrastructure challenge or there's no availability of nurses to accomplish the task, there is no limitation.
Fantastic, thank you. So, what do you think is most important when it comes to successfully delivering DCTs?
So I think again that it really starts with the protocol design. And really that also speaks to addressing the awareness gap of what an advanced technology platform could provide in terms of a DCT. So the DCT again is focused on bringing these services to the patient, enabling the patient to engage, to provide data, to provide access. Uh, so all of those require some level or some tool or some technology to accomplish that. So it really speaks to that element. So it really starts at the beginning, and that really is the challenge, I think, to the industry.
Thank you. The next question we have for you would like to know, what is your experience regarding sites and investigators? Do they want to use DCT mode, or do they prefer the patients coming to their sites?
So that's a great question. So I think there's a mix in that pool. Um, certainly, I believe that so there are going to be some treatments, and there may be some therapeutic areas where there's not an option, right? So some oncology-based studies that are especially dealing maybe with end-of-life issues will mandate at some level that the patient may have to go to the site, right? But I think outside of that, having the ability to use a decentralized clinical trial solution combined with an advanced platform empowers the site to be a lot more efficient in terms of reviewing the data that it's collected and providing that entry into their EDC platform. So I think it adds to the level of efficiency. Now, I am aware that some of the sites and some of the people who work at sites may run multiple studies. That's not unusual. I know that they've had some frustrations with having maybe running, let's say a site and a person at the site is running 7 studies. They may have to need access to 7 different platforms. Each one will have a unique sign-on requirement. So, but that's not necessarily something that we get involved with. I mean, because those are separate studies and the data needs to be kept separate. So it may place an additional burden on the site, but not in terms of the quality of the data. And I have to believe that fundamentally having access to a platform which they can access through their computer versus having to keep binders of books with lots of paper is a much greater headache than being able to look online, see the data, transcribe it into the EDC. So I think that there is benefits of efficiency and time use that I think overcomes some of the limitations that or hesitations that they may have.
Excellent, thank you. The next question we have for you first states, with so many new technology and other entrants in the DCT market, the question is, how confident are you in the outlook to standardize platforms and options for patients, nurses, and others in the supply chain?
So that's a really great question. So the standardization process is something that I hope that the organizations that I listed in a previous slide, DTRI, IMI, Human First, and the other can help to think about the structure of the standardization of data. That is a challenge within the industry. But realistically, I think the challenge really starts with the protocol and the requirement of each study, right? So each study has a different design based on the drug and the visits and what they're monitoring. So I don't know that every oncology study, for example, can have a standardized protocol in terms of what data is collected and when it's collected. And that kind of establishes the foundation for, quote, standardization. So I think that's a challenge in the future. I mean, you could, for example, develop a universal template for a visit or the collection of data. And maybe for each study, you only fill out, depending on the study, one case, for one study, you may fill out 15% of that total template. In another one, you may fill out 5%. In another one, you may fill out 70%. But, that putting together the standardization of a template on what data is collected, I think is a real challenge, and I don't see that really happening in short term.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much for that answer and for all of the answers. However, we have reached the end of the Q&A portion of this webinar. Now, if we couldn't attend to your questions, the team at MRN may follow up with you, or if you have further questions, you can direct them to the email address that's on your screen. I want to thank everyone for participating in today's webinar. You will be receiving a follow-up email from XTalks with access to the recorded archive for this event. A survey window will be popping up on your screen as you exit. and your participation is appreciated as it will help us to improve our webinars. Now, I'm about to send you a link in the chat box, and with this link, you'll be able to view the recording of this event on this page, and you can also share this link with your colleagues when they register for the recording here as well. So I encourage you to do that. Now, please join me once more in thanking our speaker for his time here today, Edward Tribell. We hope that you all found the webinar informative. Have a great day, everyone, and thanks for coming.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this.